Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Okay. I'll turn you down. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a loud one.
Whew. No, it's okay. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing.
And her mic is what it wants to be.
Testing 1 2 3.
Okay.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing.
Good.
It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Good afternoon, folks. We are here broadcasting from our beautiful Stuart, Florida. Folks, today's show, we're going to discuss how well we, the voters, vet our candidates and what we know about them. Honestly, this may be one of the toughest shows I have ever done. And this show is being aired because of the comments that our Congressman Brian Mast made. And it made me question, what do we really know about this man? Brian is a patriot. He lost his legs and part of his hand defending our country. And I am greatly appreciative and grateful for that. But I had to ask, does this automatically make him a true conservative, a strong protector of our Republican principles, of our Constitution, a truly good person? Brian made some vile comments, which I think Iggy can show. And that's what made me take a look that's more in depth. It's not easy. In fact, I did a television ad supporting Brian in 2018 when he ran the race 2 years ago. But sadly today, I see him in a much different light. Joining us on the phone is Craig Sawyer. He's a Marine veteran, former elite Navy SEAL Team 6 member, sniper, combat instructor, law enforcement agent who fights child sex trafficking through his organization that he founded called Veterans for Child Rescue. How are you doing today, Craig?
I'm doing well, Casey. Thanks for having me on today.
Craig, I greatly appreciate you being here. Your voice is very important, and I know you had to rearrange your schedule to ensure that you were able to join us, and you're out in Arizona. So again, thank you so much. We also have in the studio Nyla Pipes. You all know her as a real strong community activist. We've heard her voice for years about the water issues here in Florida, and she co-founded an organization, One Florida Foundation. And I've known Nyla since about 2013 when we both went to Washington, D.C. to demand cleaner water. And I was shocked after Congressman Mast made these vile comments. Nyla had the courage to come out in public and let everybody know that she is a rape survivor herself. Never knew this about her, but this is the comments the congressman made. Had all these memories flooding back for Nyla, and I'm sure many, many other women and girls. And this is why these comments are not jokes. They're not funny.
That's right. And I so appreciate you reaching out and inviting me to be on the show because, you know, this is so incredibly personal, and I can't express enough how much this shapes who I am as a person. You know, I've had lots of counseling. It happened in my 20s. I was 21, 20 years ago. And when I realized that a man that was supposed to represent me had made such, frankly, vile comments and joked about rape, and as a mom of a daughter, I slept on it overnight, and I went, you know, I have to do everything I can to talk about what that does to a person and to talk about how we've got to do better as citizens, as representatives in our community, and particularly people in leadership roles.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're talking about these comments. Let's put them on the table right now. In 2009, Brian Mast, now campaign manager and good friend, was in South Africa. And Brian made the comment that, you know, I hope you can hook up with as many 15-year-olds over there as you can, because it's legal, right? And then 2 years later at 31, he also made another vile comment when his friend Rocco Delaney said, you know, he's looking for a hookup line, and Brian said, "Don't turn this rape into a murder." Not funny at all. And because of those comments, many people have come out and denounced or asked for the congressman's resignation, including Craig Sawyer and Nyla. We also have Melissa McKinley, Palm Beach County Commissioner, Senator Lauren Brooke, Roger Stone, Congressman Brian Mast must withdraw from his race for Congress and resign from the House in light of recently uncovered remarks in which he discussed raping 15-year-olds. We cannot have pedophiles in Congress. Roy Moore also said, and he's the former Chief Justice, Alabama Supreme Court, when false and malicious sexual allegations over 40 years old were made against me in a hotly contested Senate race in Alabama in 2017, Representative Brian Mast called upon me to drop out of the race without ever trying to find out the truth. Now, by his own admission, he has joked about inappropriate sexual relationships with 15-year-olds. Congress does not deserve such hypocrisy. Mast should drop out of the race by his own judgment, lest he help elect another Democrat to Congress. And Jacob Perry, a former Mast campaign consultant, also denounced the congressman. Craig, what did the congressman's comments mean to you?
I think it's just a lack of appreciation and sensitivity to the lives that have been utterly devastated, to the trauma that occurs in these victims. The human mind is not fully developed until more like 23 to 25 years of age now that the scientists are discovering. So their frontal lobe and outer cortex, the higher level of thinking and rationalization, are not yet fully developed yet. And so a child cannot advocate for themselves against a full-grown predatory adult. It's rape for a reason for an adult to have sex with someone under the age of 18. And so I think it's misguided for anybody to want to lower that age limit. I think that shows a kind of a diabolical output that some of our politicians out west are pushing for. But just to make the comments about it just shows a lack of understanding of the damage to the victims. We deal with them all the time. We try to recover as many as we can. We arrest the predators that are basically serial child rapists. A pedophile rapes on the average of 70 children each throughout their lifetimes because they like to get into positions of access to children, especially unsupervised positions of access to children, where they can abuse that position of trust again and again and again. Some of them rape and destroy the lives of hundreds of children, and some get caught immediately. And so the average is 70 children each, as best they can determine now.
70 children. 70 children.
Yeah,
each.
yeah.
Each, folks.
And when you talk to, and it's staggering how many who walk among us, a third to 40%, maybe more, have actually been victims of some sort of child molestation or rape. It's staggering to see how many are out there, and it's heartbreaking to know that so many people were put through this, because it's not supposed to be how we treat the children. They're God's most precious and innocent. They're to be sacred. Look, life has enough turmoil and stress and hostility to throw at us in our adulthood. And my thing is, let's just let the children have a fair start. Let's just get them to 18, for the love of God. Let's just do that. Let's just let them play and learn and love them and support them so that they can grow up secure and have a fair start, rather than being just absolutely devastated by this abuse, because their little minds, they don't understand. That's why it's so tragic in my mind and my understanding, talking to all the survivors and the ones that have gotten the most healing, which call themselves the overcomers, which I think is pretty inspiring. But you talk to them and they'll explain to you what it did to them. They can't articulate it in their childhood, but they can once they're an adult, especially after they're gone, what we refer to as a therapied adult, one that's gone through quite a bit of counseling and therapy, and they're in touch with how it impacted them, and they can give you an honest assessment on what it did to them. It's heartbreaking and it's utterly devastating. So to me, his comments just indicate that he doesn't have an appreciation for that, or he's got a sociopathic tendency that causes him not to care. And either way, when we're in an epidemic, child trafficking in the United States, selling children for sex, is the fastest growing criminal enterprise on earth. They estimate it at $38 to $50 billion a year in revenue.
Wow.
Selling children in the United States. Folks, that's a lot of money. That's bigger than all of our pro sports teams combined. It's staggering. Imagine how much harm and trauma has to come to children to generate that sort of revenue every 365 days. So we've got ourselves a problem, and it's become a cultural problem because it's been kept secret, and so many of us that are repulsed by it have turned away. And I say now's the time when we must not turn away. Let's be silent no more on this. Evil prevails when good men and women do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Do nothing
So
and excuse the behavior and make excuses for it.
That's
yes,
right.
ma'am. So I take that statement by Edmund Burke a step further. If you know that evil prevails when good men and women do nothing, and if you do nothing knowing this, how can you be a good man or woman?
Hear,
So
hear.
now's the time when we have to step up. It's not on each of us to save the entire world. We don't have to fall apart and get stressed out of it, but we do have to face it and begin coordinating to do something about it. And that means speaking up, having the moral courage to stand up and say, this is wrong. And even when it's a veteran whom I appreciate and respect, especially one that's been injured, but like you pointed out previously, that does not give automatic license and cause them to be righteous in any decision that they make, especially one that's abusive to the defenseless. And so we have to stand up, and I don't hate him. I'm not looking to destroy his life. It's nothing like that. But if we have conservative elected officials that are going to speak and behave this way, then God help us, because look at the other side. Look how absolutely reprobate, diabolical the radical left is, and how they want to devastate the children. They want to teach kindergartners. We want to start conditioning them to be good little sexual victims and start lowering the ages for any sort of sexual consent and exposing innocent, precious children to all manner of sexual perversion that they're not interested in, don't have any business being exposed to. It sexualizes them, and once their minds have been tainted like that, once they've been exploited and defiled like that, there's no going back. It's always in their minds. They can't purge their minds from it. They can heal from it and gain more healthy outlook, but the poison is already there. So we've got to defend the children, and this is part of that.
Craig, we definitely do. And I want to talk a little bit more about what you do with your organization. We've had a couple comments come in here. Corey Weiner said, personal character flaws are not correlated to sound policy making. There is no scientific empirical evidence. So war injuries, single parent handicap, these are not reasons to elect a person. And, identity politics is a feeble crutch for weak candidate platforms. So, I think people are seeing through these comments for what they are and how detrimental they truly are. And I want to talk a little bit. You have a documentary I watched this week. It's called Contraland. And folks, it's free to watch on the internet. It's on YouTube, Contraland. You Google it, it'll come right up. Craig, I'm sick to my stomach right now as I'm going to read some of the people that you caught in a sting operation. There was a man that wanted to be with a 12-year-old and her mom. An Army recruiter came who had wife and kids at home to be with 12-year-old. An IRS agent, Criminal Investigation Division, brought a birthday cake for the little girl that he thought was turning 13 years old. He's 15 and 13-year-old kids on his own. A grandpa-type guy in a suit and tie, seemed so friendly, married, was there for little girls they thought were 12 and 13 years old. This is what your documentary showed. And Craig, who are the predators? Where do they work? What do they look like?
Well, there's one specific type, and you can if you can nail down the specific type, you can spot them instantly. They look like anybody. And I'm sorry, I chuckle about it because it's difficult, but evil can manifest itself in the heart of any man. And by man, I mean men and women. Mm-hmm. It's a weak character that allows themselves to get off on this goat trail and go down this path of perversion and entertain it until they end up raping children. There's a set of moral standards that we know is healthy and good, and I think we would do well as a nation and as a society and a culture to revisit those moral standards and realize there's a reason that our nation's enemies are targeting our culture and our morals, because that's the backbone of what made our country insurmountable to defeat. They can't beat us with tanks, planes, and guns, so they must attack us where we're strongest, and that's from within, to tear down our unity, our patriotism, our strong spiritual beliefs, our nuclear family unit. All of these core values that make us so strong as a country are under attack. And that what they're doing to the children is part of that ideological subversion campaign that's been ongoing since before I was born, and I'm 56 years old. So if we do well to know our enemy's playbook, to know their objectives, because then we'll understand how to stop the damage. And when I see quotes like this, I see elected officials speaking out like this, it jumps out as a red flag to me because I understand the damage it leads to. And that's why I'm quick to jump up and say, that's not okay. Veteran or not, that's not okay. Republican or not, that's not okay. And we have to hold a firm line. And I think, that someone like Brian can get together with somebody that understands a lot more, educate himself on it, learn from the victims. And if he's got quality of character, there could be a change and a healing within him. And I think the most beautiful outcome is he turns around and goes, oh my God, what have I done? I didn't realize that was so damaging. And while he may not need to serve in office anymore, whatever he does with his life after this, I hope he goes and heals himself and becomes a better man on the inside.
Craig,
And again, I'll always appreciate his service.
absolutely,
Yes, ma'am.
absolutely, we all do it. And Craig, speaking to what you just said, I kind of felt that Brian has not taken full responsibility. And I'll say that because when the story broke, he gave a comment to the newspaper, or his camp gave a comment to the newspaper, and at first tried to blame it on his injury. And then it turned out the pedophilia comment was before he even went to Afghanistan. It was before he was injured. And then he did have an interview with a very friendly reporter to him, Michael Williams from WPTV, and that's it. There's absolutely no comments on any of his congressman pages, on his personal pages. There was no accountability whatsoever. And this is a congressman that does lives all the time. We had a live video because a reporter knocked on his door. He did a live video from Washington, D.C. I mean, he does live videos all the time. But yet this very important, disturbing, and these vile comments, he did not bother to address once on his social media pages. And I thought, this campaign says it's not a big deal. Speak to it once with the reporter and then move on so it'll go away. That's the message I got from that. How about you, Nyla?
Well, that's part of why I decided to speak up, because I told my story the next day after I saw, the comments, and I was just so, my stomach turned, because you think, and this speaks to the nuclear family unit and the damage that is done. Even as a 21-year-old young woman, having my power stripped away from me and being made super vulnerable in an instant without permission, it really messes with your head, and it makes you realize that the world is so dangerous all the time for women and children. And then you go down, you can go down a very dark road where, you don't get up out of bed, and you start to maybe drink, or, other things become involved for self-medication. People try to cope because they don't know what to do with themselves, right? And then that erodes all of those good decision-making qualities you may have possessed prior to being violated in such a horrible way. And I was really, this is going to sound bizarre, but I was really lucky because I come from such a small town that I watched a lot of drugs and alcohol in my life. So I didn't go that route. But I will tell you, I'm the first in my entire family to get to graduate college. And I almost quit.
Over this.
I was 6 months away from my degree, and I almost quit because of the rape. So when you start talking about rape as a joke, or targeting 15-year-old girls, part of my story is I actually had an attempted rape when I was 16. My mom was a bookkeeper, and she had asked me, I just got my driver's license. She had asked me to drop off some paperwork. And it was a guy I knew, he worked with my mom. I'd seen him lots of times, whatever. Didn't think anything of it. It was hot. And I was invited into a split level house, and that's that little foyer area, the opening where they open the door.
Right.
He invited me in while he, grabbed some paperwork or something that he needed to send with me. And the second I stepped in, that man shoved me up against the wall, and I was quick to, go for vulnerable places and push him off of me at age 16. So then to turn around at age 21 and have a completed rape happen because I trusted a friend of mine's boyfriend. This was a guy she was planning to marry, a guy that, he was an acquaintance to me, but one of my good friends trusted him.
Right.
I trusted him to walk me home from the bar. And yep, I had a couple of beverages. I was a college kid in a university town living my best life. And it all went south in a heartbeat. And the recovery and the ability to have a good family unit long after now has taken me years. I have a very patient husband. He understands that sometimes a look or a word can throw me into a post-traumatic stress disorder situation. These things are really important to talk about. So I've had people, say to me, oh, this is political for you. And I am a registered Republican in St. Lucie County. I have worked beside Brian Mast. I don't always agree with him, but I'm not really sure where we got to a point in our country where we're supposed to always agree We're supposed to push our representatives to do better. That's a part of being an American. And so this is not an attack on Congressman Mast. I too respect a lot of what he has done. And obviously the work he's done for our country, in the military. But I agree, military service does not excuse. And the lack of sincere apology, I find incredibly alarming. I mean, I would love for him to turn around and come to us and tell us all about what he's going to do for women like me and children, because Harmony's law is great, but it serves a very small portion of our community, and it feels sort of like a token effort at this point, quite frankly.
Nyla, I definitely appreciate you coming in, and I see how raw your emotion is and sharing your story. It is very important that people realize that every victim out there, this brings up those raw, hurtful
and
emotions.
It's so prevalent. I mean, completed rape, it's about 1 in 3 women.
It's incredible, way too much. And Craig, you work with the children, and it's disgusting. I can't even go there, how a man can look at a young girl like that. But for folks that are having issues on Facebook, this is also available on Alexis, WSTU AM 1450, and TuneIn, and this will be uploaded to a podcast tomorrow. So I apologize for whatever's happening on Facebook, but you can listen some other ways right now. Craig, one comment I get over and over about this show is, I'm Republican, we got to keep it red, you need to vote masked. What do you say to those people that are really putting politics over principles?
Well, I would say we've got a fracture in this nation like I've never seen in my lifetime. And we're not just discussing which pot of money we're going to pave the roads with and how we're going to pay for school books. It's not, small differences. It's whether or not we're going to be a free market economy and a constitutional republic anymore, or if we're going to fall under global Marxism with the sugar frosting of democratic socialism is how they wheel it in, and then you get clobbered over the head with the reality after they breach the door. So radically different ideals on what life is about and how you're to live. And so it's very, very polarized. And I would say, we want an absolutely Republican in there, because look at what the Democrats have slumped into on the radical left. But all the Democrats seem to be wildly off on the radical left now, and half of the Republicans are in name only. So I'd say half of the problem is getting not just a Republican in there. It's not enough to have a Republican in name only. We need quality people with moral character and conviction who will actually stand up for our ideals and push the ball upfield for God, country, and family. And it won't do to have one in there with weak character that's laughing about raping girls and underage girls and these kinds of things. And I think it's not a matter of we have to replace him and we have to vote for a Democrat over him. I think we just need to have more honorable Republican candidates. I think, a lot more of us veterans need to step up and go, okay, look, I've led a pretty clean life. There's only so much garbage they could throw at me. How about I get in there and help run for office? And you don't have to be a military. You just have to be a person who's willing to serve and has had some good experiences in life and has the moral courage to stand up for your convictions and what your people want. So hopefully there's another Republican behind it that we can elevate. Moral courage is something that I'm seeing the women step up and demonstrate a lot more of than the men. Talking about veterans, and I'm challenging a lot of the veterans, like, look, guys, you're blowing up. You've been running through a hail of machine gun fire. That's very impressive physical courage on the battlefield. God bless you. But right now, in our homeland, what we need is moral courage. We need people to stand up and say, this is not okay. We have to eradicate this abuse and drive it from our nation to heal our country and grow back a stronger, better culture, one that is protective of children again and not abusive of them or dismissive of the harm that comes to them.
We do. We need somebody to protect our innocent, the weak, the elderly, all of us. But the children are so innocent and they're young. And our vote does matter. They can't even vote, for crying out loud. And it's so important to have somebody with a good moral compass. Being a congressman or congresswoman, it is an honorable position. And you need to be an honorable person to hold that, in my opinion. The other problem I see happening here locally is our local Republican Party, the REC, Republican Executive Committees, have been completely silent on this. Very disappointing to me. They haven't even denounced Congressman Mast. In fact, they said our job is to make sure a Republican gets in, and that's it. A gentleman by the name of Michael Willis actually went into the St. Lucie County REC asking for a couple resolutions of condemnation, and they actually quickly motioned to adjourn the meeting and shut him down. And I have a clip of that meeting if you can play it, Ray.
That I would speak and find out exactly what our REC stands for. Do we stand for this? Is this something that we get behind and support? Point of order.
This is out of order. Mr. Chairman, this is not vote on this.
All right, if I can have order, please. Michael, I understand your position, and I want everybody to know that basically Brian has apologized for those remarks, number one. Number two, we all make mistakes. There isn't anyone who doesn't make mistakes. He's apologized for it. I don't believe there's anything further to say about it. It's this body's responsibility to get Republicans elected. That's what our mission is, and that's what we're going to do.
I have one final rebuttal, please. I have one final rebuttal. I too have read the rules about the RPOF and the RECs.
I'm sorry?
You will be judged by the community if you fail to act.
We have a move to adjourn?
Not Brian, you.
Somebody second it. One second.
So that's what happened when somebody wanted to have the St. Lucie County Republican Executive Committee have a resolution about what Brian had said, completely shut down. And, I think that our Republican Party, you said it well, Craig, there are a lot of rhinos out there. And, if we don't start protecting our party and what our principles and what we believe in, we are a country that's going to be doomed to socialism, to further advancement of what's happening with these children, the sex trafficking, those types of behaviors.
Look, the left has dozens of candidates just about anywhere you go, even if there's no Republican candidate on the ticket whatsoever. They're outplaying us. It's pretty hard to win when you forfeit, when you never even step foot on the battlefield. So we've got to start rallying and encouraging more good quality people of all types who share our founding fathers' vision for this country and our traditional conservative values that have proven so effective in making this the most wealthy sanctuary of freedom and liberty on earth. And the other side is throwing so many bodies at it and so much money. We have to get active and get in there and compete. And I think that's half the battle. So it shouldn't be just one candidate that we're like, well, he's our only Republican. Well, how many does the other side have? They probably have dozens. And so I think we can step it up on that front as well.
Absolutely. And we really need to vet our candidates. And this race this year is actually a little interesting here locally. I never vote independent. I've always voted party. And oddly enough, this year there's an independent in the race who's a Republican, but chose to run on the independent ticket because he felt like he wasn't able to win the Republican primary because Brian Mast was very popular with his injury. So he wanted to allow people who are independents to be able to vote because we have a closed primary system here in Florida. They cannot vote in the primary. So we do have another candidate. His name's KW Miller. He's going to be on here end of October. He's been on a show in the past as well. So folks, we need to really vet our candidates. I'm asking you to please vet them. This is so important. I'm going to talk a little bit here when we talk about rhinos. And so many people said, I'm voting for Brian because he's got the R behind his name. I wonder how many people really know Brian. And honestly, I was one of those people. I was a war hero, he very popular. I'd see him in the grocery store. You could talk to him. He's approachable. But when those comments came out, that's when I said, and I thought to myself, there's not one man in my life that would make those comments, that would joke about it. That's just not, he's 29 and 31, folks. He wasn't a kid. You're encouraging your friend to hook up with these adolescent girls, underage girls, because he thought it was legal over in South Africa. Just, I was dumbfounded. I was disgusted by it. And so I've taken some time here to look up a little bit about Brian Mast. He's from Michigan, graduated school in 99. Then he moved to South Florida, took some classes at Palm Beach Atlantic University. He joined the Army Reserves in 2000, and he stayed in the reserves until 2006. During that time, he was in a day trading business. Apparently, he said it didn't suit him. And in 2006 is when he transitioned to the active Army. He was deployed to Afghanistan in July of 2010. And of course, we all know September 19, 2010 is when he received his very serious injuries. 2015 is when he decided to run for our district, Congressional District 18, and he was not from the district. He bought a 1,095 square foot condo in the area to run for CD 18. And he actually, back in 2016, was one of two candidates that accepted sugar money from the Faneuils. Rick Roth, a sugar farmer, was the other candidate that had accepted money. What's interesting about that story is Mast claimed to return the money, but the truth was he only returned the Faneuils money. He raised almost $100,000 in the Faneuils fundraisers and returned $12,000 of it only to the Faneuils. The rest of the money he kept. One of the candidates called him out for this half-truth. And Brian's response to him off air, it was during a debate, was a real piece of the S word. Called him a real piece of S. So, I think maybe some of his mannerisms have snuck out in the past when I read that. And I thought, who does that? That other candidate was truthful. It was a half-truth. He hadn't returned all the money, and to call him a piece of S. Also, Brian, the Freedom Works, there are over 6 million Americans who are passionate about promoting free markets and individual liberty. Our members all share three common traits: a desire for less government, lower taxes, and more economic freedom. Brian, they rank our members on how well that they are upholding their principles. Brian tied for 166 to 170 of 251 Republican members. His lifetime votes gets a 63%. That's 1 point above a D- if that was to be a school grade. Now, on the other side, 72 Republicans ranked 80% or higher. Brian was 63%. That's at freedomworks.org. Another group, the Conservative Review, trust but verify. Conservative Review goes beyond the empty rhetoric of traditional political media to give conservatives the unfiltered truth about their elected officials, as well as current policy issues that matter most. Conservative Review is designed to pull back the curtain on Washington and the political games played by politicians who seek to dilute conservatism and constitutional values in order to advance their political agenda. Many politicians use conservative rhetoric and espouse conservative principles while campaigning, only to have a change of heart once elected. Conservative Review seeks to empower American voters to help separate rhetoric from reality. His Conservative Review Liberty score is an F rating. Part of that might have stemmed from Congressman Mast actually had voted to fund transgender sex change operations for those in the military. After he made the vote, he said, oops, I didn't mean to, but his vote was cast and could not be changed. So folks, there's two conservative groups. One gave him a 63%, one gave him a 55% an F score. And this goes back, Craig, to we need to watch who we're electing in Congress. We need to seriously vet them. We cannot have rhinos representing the conservative values that we're hoping to uphold in Washington, D.C.
Yes, ma'am, because we're counting on them. We expected, okay, we've got one of ours in there, and if they betray us, it's almost twice as damaging, because then we're like, what just happened? I mean, I think I'm confident Nyla will back me up on this, but that type of rape and abuse upon a young one changes forever their perception of relationships.
Oh, absolutely.
With a wife and a daughter who are both victims, I can tell you they perceive things different. They share with me, they confide in me, and I can see their behavior.
Yeah, it
It's
leaves
just-
lasting scars. It does. And
Yeah.
and it's something that you live with every day. It's one of those things, one of the criticisms that has been thrown my direction, because I chose to speak up, is yes, but he was in the military, and that changes a person. And my answer to that is while I respect greatly military service, and I know it's absolutely a pillar of how we exist as a country, it's very important. What I think I need people to understand about this is some of us have walked through other fires and lived to tell about it. And military service doesn't excuse everything from here on out. And I know it has got to be unbelievably hard to reconcile the things that you've been through when you've served and when you've been blown up and when you've had bodily damage and mental damage from all of that. And I respect that. But PTSD is a very real thing for many, many of us out here who have lived through other horrible experiences.
Yeah. Well, I could ask any veteran like that, who did you serve to protect, brother, if not the most precious and innocent and vulnerable among us? And then not one of them could tell me and look me straight in the eye and have the moral courage to say, Craig, I fought for everybody but the little children, because I believe in raping the children is just somehow an awesome thing. I mean, none of them can look me in the eye and tell me that. They're probably afraid to try to tell me that, but we serve to protect our people and our homeland and our culture and the elderly and the defenseless and the children. And so I challenge any veteran that's making such callous comments or conducting themselves with that type of behavior. What did you serve? What did you think you were serving to protect? What were you defending, if not the children over there? And so you got to look yourself in the mirror and ask who you are and why you served and what your service even meant to you. So that's a question I tend to ask and point out, because it's like, we've got to know what we're about, folks.
Absolutely.
You sure do, Craig. And that comment about, hooking up with as many 15-year-olds or hooking up with 15-year-olds, that absolutely floored me that somebody who is supposed to be a protector could even be thinking that, let alone put that out publicly for all to see.
Yeah, there's a bridge too far, right? Where people who make those comments don't personally represent me. And that's the thing that people want to excuse the behavior. It's just boys being boys, or as a result of his service, I'm sure he's got scars and dark places, and sometimes he just goes there. Those are the sorts of things that have been said to me, and for me personally, my answer is this is not a person who represents me.
And I agree with you 100%. And I feel the same way. And people will make excuses. I saw that, he was only 20. No, he wasn't. He was 29 and 31 years old. He was married at the time. Michael Willis said, it's a sad day when we, the people, can't even have the discussion about when those at the RECs don't allow the debate of issues with Brian. And he's funded a ton of the local RECs. So it's their belief the RECs won't speak out against Brian because he gives them money for their functions and whatnot. But really, folks, is that what is good for our Republican Party?
Or America?
Or America? Is that
when we run high threat mobile security for our not military, but necessarily because the military have their own, but for our government officials, State Department, intelligence community officials, a lot of us are former special operations veterans from the U.S. military and from all different branches. And we all converge on certain contracts, and we're quick to remind each other, hey, we don't care, brother, what you did wherever you served before. This is here. We've got a job to do now. How well are you prepared to perform? Where are you at in your life? How are you going to perform to my left and right today? Because what we have on our plate is to get this diplomat from this part of this, hostile town where everything's blowing up over to the other side and back for a meeting, a high-level meeting, and without having them either A, blown up, or B, on Al Jazeera in the evening news in an orange jumpsuit. And so we've got to have our heads in the game. And I would say we can use that mindset for our elected officials. Hey, it's great that you're in the military. I think there's a lot of strong patriotism and core values that are instilled in the military, generally speaking. But it's, like you said earlier, it's not a free pass and carte blanche to excuse bad behavior. It should be a head start on moral character and ethical strengths. And I would expect someone that's been in the military and served honorably to be a stronger candidate and a stronger sense of service and a better performer, not one of weak character talking about abusing the vulnerable. So I would say let's look at it like that. Hey, folks, that's great. Here's a candidate, probably pretty well qualified as far as leadership and things. Let's see who they are, though, as far as their moral character and what they stand for and how they conduct themselves, and not just let prior service be carte blanche.
Michael Willis brought up something I was just about ready to bring up. Thank you, Michael. And that is another rating on Brian Mast. The NRA rates him an F. What's interesting about that is because he supported a ban on assault weapons. And folks, if you go back, Al Hoffman Jr., he's a North Palm Beach real estate developer and a major Republican donor. Back on February 18, 2018, he published an op-ed and he wanted Republicans to support a ban on assault weapons. 5 days later, February 23, 2018, this is no coincidence, 5 days later, Brian Mast op-ed appeared in the New York Times. I'm Republican, I appreciate assault weapons, and I support a ban. What happened? He had a wonderful donation from Mr. Hoffman. Between 2018 and 2020, Brian received $13,500 from Mr. Hoffman himself. Goodness knows what all he also raised through fundraisers from Mr. Hoffman's acquaintances. Now, to put that in perspective, in 2016, Al Hoffman gave Brian $2,700 to his Massive Victory Committee, his PAC. He rewarded him in 2018, April of 2018, right after that op-ed, with an $8,100 donation, and there's many other personal donations himself to equal the $13,000. So Brian Mast clearly responded for money. It wasn't about upholding our Second Amendment or upholding our conservative values or upholding our Constitution. It was about being able to be bought.
Well, to me, weakness just jumps off the page on that one. Anybody that will support in any way a ban on any type of firearm clearly does not understand this nation's history or world history, when big governments around the globe again and again and again grew too powerful and too big and began, before these government-sponsored genocide campaigns, what do they always do first? They disarm the citizens. Nobody's going to commit a genocidal campaign against the American citizens right now because we're still armed to the teeth, thank God.
That's right.
And I grew up in southern Texas where everybody was armed to the teeth, and they still are. And I don't know anybody that's ever been shot. And I know thousands and thousands of people. I've never known anybody that shot anybody else. And so it's not the firearm. It's the lack of character. It's people from broken homes. It's mentally deranged people who murder. They'll do it with a car. They'll do it with a knife. They'll do it with a lead pipe. They'll do it with their bare hands. They'll do it with poison, but they're going to get it done. And to disarm the American citizens is not something that anybody that's in touch with history or the culture of what our founding fathers set forth here for us would ever utter from their mouth. That would never come from a true patriot's mouth. That's inexcusable, either A, ignorance, or B, corruption. And in this case, because he's a veteran and he's deployed around the world, he understands the use of firearms and what it might be like to be unarmed, then I would say that it can't be ignorance. It would only be, in my mind, it smacks of corruption.
Absolutely. We have another question here. It's a fair question. Caitlin Palmieri. I do not support what Mass said in any way, but I don't understand how the words and actions of President Trump are permissible in the same community. I'd love to hear an explanation. I'll go first here, and I'll turn it to you, Craig. But, for me, there's a big difference when you have a man that is promoting hooking up with adolescent girls. There's a huge difference there for me. Do I like all of Trump's comments? No, I don't like them. But he has never, ever have I heard him promote hooking up with underage girls or rape and murder. So that's the big difference for me. Craig, what do you think?
Well, I'd have to know what comment they're referring to. Actually, one of the things in this ideological subversion campaign against all of us is to invert the value between words and action. We all have grown up and inherently understand that action speaks louder than words. So when I look at a candidate, I look at what they do more than what they say. And I look at a president that has factually made our country financially stronger, militarily stronger, brought more peace than any president in my lifetime. And he has given better job opportunities and empowerment stats to women and minorities than any time in our nation's entire history. That's action. So I don't care that he's not an eloquent speaker or that he's a bit crude, because right now, when he came into office, he took over an absolute, he was right in the middle of a massive coup against our country, and he's still in it. They're still trying to get him out of there because he's disrupting the absolute checkmate move that the global Marxists wanted, to have absolute control over our country. And so they can't tolerate it. And so, yes, they're going to criticize every single thing that he says. But I'm watching, what does he do? He's serving in good faith. He is sacrificing for you and me. And he's doing a pretty fantastic job considering how little support around him it appears that he actually has. So I would challenge them, okay, what is it that you think he said? And why is it that you don't care about the entire sea of absolute corruption by his opposition? You don't care about Benghazi. You don't care about Uranium One. You don't care about the FISA warrant abuses, and on and on and on. It's just an entire sea of it. So to criticize him on how he speaks or how he articulates something without going into specifics, I think that's pretty weak on their part.
And I agree with you 100%. This man loves this country. That's the only reason why he ran. I can't imagine why anybody would put themselves in that position unless you truly love the country like President Trump has. And you've brought out so many great points, and there's so many more. Just, the unemployment part of it is bringing manufacturing jobs back here. He's bringing good jobs back here, and he fights for this country. He really is a true patriot, and that's President Trump. And you are absolutely right. He's in. We all are in for the fight of our country right now, and he had to battle I don't know how many rhinos to get into the office to begin with. We saw them come out in the Republican Party 4 years ago, and it's Craig. I just and Nyla, I think people are not vetting candidates like we need to.
And holding them accountable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. We absolutely need to do that. Craig Sawyer, again, I so much appreciate you being on here. We're down to our last minute. Folks, please, if you can take some time, Contraland. This is eye-opening. There's some things in there that'll open your eyes even more. And Craig, this is something that, thank you. Thank you for your service. It's very personal to you. And thank God you're out there.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And they can go to contralandmovie.com. And that's connected to our org's direct website, which is vetsforchildrescue.org, where there's a wealth of additional information on how to contact your elected officials and write them, how to find the apps that are putting our children in harm's way, and on and on and on. There's a lot of information. Go there, empower yourself, share it with all your friends.
Craig Sawyer, thank you so much. Nyla Pipes, thank you. God bless you. I appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you.
I know it's been very tough. Thank you, folks. Craig Sawyer from Veterans for Child Rescue and Nyla Pipes.
Thank you, guys.